It's your open source advocate, and I'm back with another video, and today I'm going to talk about WireGuard Easy. Now this is one that people have asked me about for quite a long time. I've just never covered it, and I don't really know why. It's a really nice looking web user interface for controlling your WireGuard server. Now I've shown you multiple types of these systems in the past, one that I created a long time ago and kind of let go by the wayside. I've also shown you NetMaker, NetBird, using head scale with the tail scale clients, things like that. And NetMaker, NetBird, tail scale, those are all really cool, and they've got some really great advanced functions, especially if you're an organization or an enterprise. But if you're a family or you're just an individual who has multiple devices you want to connect up, those might be a little bit of an overkill for you. And WireGuard Easy is probably the solution that you're actually looking for. So first of all, it's exactly what it says. It tries to make it easy to run WireGuard on your server. It tries to make it easy for you to get the interface configuration files down to your devices, whether you're using a QR code to scan with your phone or your tablet, or you're using the actual configuration interface file down on your computers. It doesn't really matter how you get them. It's got different ways for you to do that, and it's really great. And you can see here it's got a pretty clean interface. Now this is a pretty zoomed up or small screen version of their interface, but you can see here it's got the name of the person. This may be the name of the device. It just depends on how it's set up, and we'll see that as we get into it. And then you've got this toggled on switch that basically says they're connected or enabled. You've got a few different ways to basically delete the device, to download the configuration file, and then of course to get the QR code for that configuration file. And you can even see if it's an active device and if it's got anything moving up and down to the server at the time. So pretty cool, pretty neat, and pretty simple. And this is exactly what most of us probably need if we're just using this at home and trying to get back to our services in our home, or just trying to have a nice private secure connection out to the internet. There's a lot of different things you can do with WireGuard, but for sure this is a nice easy way to do it. Now if you've never tried WireGuard Easy, it really is pretty easy to get set up. So they talk about the features right here on the page, and I'll have links in the show notes in the description on how to get to this page so you can see all the information for yourself. I'm also going to show you how I'm getting it set up and where I'm getting it set up, and I'll have that in the description and the show notes as well so that you can follow along. I always have the show notes linked in the description if I've done show notes for that particular video, so that you can go and do this at your own pace and kind of follow along and see what I'm doing. So right here you've got a few features. We can just hit on a few of them. It's an all-in-one WireGuard plus Web UI. Easy installation, simple to use. You've got create, edit, delete, enable, and disable clients, which is really nice. Show the client's QR code, download the configuration file. I mean, you can just see everything here that it's got. The requirements are you need a host with a kernel that supports WireGuard, which is pretty much all modern kernels. You also need a host with Docker installed. So I'll go through how to install Docker on our server today. It's really easy. I've got a simple script that just makes it super easy. Hopefully it will work just fine for you. I know I've tested it on multiple operating systems, but if you happen to run into an issue, leave an issue for me on my GitLab page, and then I'll try to get that fixed, and maybe you can work with me to give me some logs to help me figure out what happened. But usually it works out of the box. It's a really convenient script. Right here we've got the way that he wants you to install Docker is fine, but I'm going to go through how I do it. We've also got run WireGuard Easy. So he's got a Docker run command. I took this and I turned it into a Docker Compose just because I prefer Docker Compose. It makes it easier for kind of managing things. So we'll go through that as well. And then down here, if you want to sponsor it, this is a great way to do this. So if you like this, you're going to go out here and just click on this, and you can get him something really nice for having this awesome open source application for you to use. And it's always worth it to go out there and just give them anything you can, because it lets them know you like the application and that you appreciate what it does. It lets them know, hey, I'd love to see this continue, and it encourages that developer to keep that going. So please really consider going out there and just pledging something, giving them $1, a euro, a peso, whatever your currency happens to be. Try to give them something if you can, because it lets them know you really appreciate it. So you've got different options here, and he talks about what the options are in the Docker Compose file so you can get that set up properly for your use case. And then he tells you how to update if you're just using straight Docker. So if you want to use straight Docker, this is what you do, but with Docker Compose, we can do this in a little bit less steps. It's a little bit easier in my opinion. And then here's your common use cases. So using WireGuard Easy with Pi-hole, using WireGuard Easy with an Nginx or SSL certificate. So we'll kind of go through some of that as well. We're going to start off with the basics. We're going to go through just getting things set up on your server and then how to get Docker installed. And then we'll go through getting actually Wireguard Easy installed with just an IP. And after that, we'll go through and we'll set it up with a URL or a web address or a domain name. And then we'll make sure that that's secured with an SSL certificate. And we'll talk about how to do that as well. So stick with me. We're going to get into it right after this. I want to say thank you to all of my subscribers and all of my patrons over at Patreon. Seriously, you guys make this so worth it for me to do these videos every week. I really, truly enjoy it. And I just can't say thank you enough. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe. Let YouTube know that I'm doing a good job by subscribing to the channel. Plus, you'll get notified when I have new videos coming out. And finally, if you're enjoying what I'm doing, give it a like. Just click on that thumbs up, and that way YouTube knows that you like it, and they'll pass it along to other people that might enjoy my content as well. I really appreciate it. Thank you again. Let's get started. All right, I use DigitalOcean to set up the server that I want to use for this particular WireGuard instance. If you don't use a VPS already and you're looking to get into one, I do have an affiliate link in the description. I want to be fully transparent. If you go and click that link, it will give you a credit. That credit is good for 60 days and I believe $50 of DigitalOcean usage. So this server I set up is one of the smaller ones. I think it's $7 a month. So you could get quite a few of these servers set up in DigitalOcean for $50 to test out. If you stay with DigitalOcean, if you sign up and you start paying them after the credit's done, then I will get a credit as well. That's all I get out of it is a credit towards my DigitalOcean bill. This just helps me keep the bills down whenever I'm using DigitalOcean for these types of videos, which is great. But if you don't, it's fine. I don't get anything out of it. I just wanted to make sure that we're clear about that. So I set this up. It gives me a public IP address, which is great, and we're going to go and actually attach to that. So over here, I'm just going to use SSH, and it's root at the public IP address. So initially, it just gives you root access to your device. So I'm just going to hit this, and I set up my SSH keys, so it should just log me right in without any trouble, and it did. That's great. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to update and upgrade this server, which means just put in all the updates that it may need just in case it's an older image. So we're just going to do apt update, 2 ampersands, and then apt upgrade, and then -y just tells it, go ahead and do it. You don't have to ask me if I really want to do this, and we'll hit enter and we'll just let that start running. So it's going to go out and do those updates. It's going to upgrade the server. It'll probably take 2 to 3 minutes, and then it'll be done, and we'll go on to the next part. All right, that update completed. So really quick, I'm just going to do a reboot because it did install a kernel update, and it's always good to reboot after that. So I'm just going to do reboot, just like that. It's going to take it down. We're going to give it about 20-30 seconds, and it'll be back up and ready to go. And we can just SSH back in just like we just did. So once we get that going, you can usually just hit the up arrow on your keyboard, and that'll put in the last command that you ran. So in this case, the SSH was the last one that I ran, and we should be able to get back in there. If you hit enter and it says connection refused, it just tells you it's not up yet and it's not ready. Just give it a few more seconds, hit that up arrow again, and we'll just give it another shot. And there we go. It's getting ready, so it's going to try to make that connection, and we're done. So the next thing I want to do is I want to create a non-root user that has super user privileges. So the way we do that in Ubuntu and Debian at least is do add user and then space and then the username you want. So I'll put Brian. You would put, of course, your username. And then it's going to ask you, okay, what password do you want for this user? Now, you should put in a long, strong password because this is the password that gives you super user, basically root privileges when you're logged in. So if anybody ever did hack into your account somehow, at least they would still have to know your password to do anything that root could do. So I'm going to type this in, and then it's going to ask you to confirm it. And then it's going to ask you, do you want a full name? So all these things you can fill out, but you don't have to. I'm just going to go to the end here, hit Y, and we're done with that part. Now I need to make my user a super user. So I've created my user, but I haven't made them a super user yet. So we're going to do user mod, which modify the user, and then space, -a, capital G, which means add them to the group, sudo, and then what user or users do you want? So in this case, I'll put Brian, but if I had 4 or 5 users, I could put Brian, Tom, Lori, all those kind of things, and they would all be added to the super user group together. In this case, it's just me, so I'm just going to hit enter. And now the last thing I need to do is, because I put my SSH keys here and it gave them to the root user, I really want them for my Brian user. Now, if I had password access enabled, I could use SSH-copy ID like this. and then I would put in Brian at the IP address of this system, and I do that from my regular system, and it would copy over my keys and everything to the Brian user. But since I don't have password authentication set up, and I don't want to set it up, the other thing I can do is I can just copy the SSH folder over and then give it the right permissions. So I'm just going to do cp-r.ssh, and then I'm going to put that to /home/Brian, and then an n/ right there. So that's done. I've copied the SSH file over, but I need to give that file in that new location the permissions that says Brian owns it. So I'm going to do chown, like chone, and then space hyphen capital R, which means everything inside of the folder, and then Brian : Brian. That means the owner is Brian and the group for it is Brian. And then we're going to put in /home/Brian. And that means everything under my home folder will be owned by me, which it should be. So there we go. So now I should be able to exit. So that logs me out of that system. And then I can just do the up arrow, and I'm going to go back here and replace root with my new user. And it should just log me in with the SSH keys, and it does. And if I do sudo apt update, we'll just do an update real quick. It should prompt me for my super user password, and then it should do the command. So if all of that functions correctly, you have correctly set yourself up as a super user on the system, which is step one, which is great. So we've set up our DigitalOcean droplet for the user we need. The next step we want to do is actually go and get Docker and Docker Compose installed on this server. So out here in GitLab, I have this project that I created a few years ago because I got tired of having to install Docker and Docker Compose every time I did a video or every time I set up a new machine, things like that. It was just a lot of separate commands that I had to go through. And so I started thinking, well, I should just make this easier on myself and at the same time share it with everybody so that it's easier for you. So it's an open source script that you can go and get. It actually does a few extra things, so we'll talk about that. But what you do is you come down to this little part here, and I'll make this a little bit smaller so you can see the name, but I'm just going to go and actually grab this thing, and I'm going to click into it, and I'll have this actual command in the show notes so you won't have to do all of this. And I'm going to go over here to the raw, and I'm just going to grab this URL. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go back to my terminal, and I'm going to do wget -O, and then I'm going to say install -docker.sh. So I want to create a file called install-docker.sh, and what I want in there is the contents of the file I just copied the link for. So I'm just going to put in that link right here. That's going to go pull it down, and now if I clear this out and do an ls, you'll see that we have install-docker.sh. I need to change the permissions on this file, so I'm going to do chmod +x, which means make it executable. And then I'm going to do install-docker.sh. So I've changed it to where it's executable. Now I can just do // which means in the current directory run install-docker.sh. So we're going to run that script. It's going to come up and tell us what it sees about our system. So in this case, I've got Ubuntu. It's a Ubuntu 2204 LTS, and it's jammy. So I just need to look through the number list here, and I need to find Ubuntu, and there's 2204, and it says 2204 plus, which means anything after basically 2004 should work. So I'm just going to put in number 4. That's the system I'm on. It's going to come up and ask, do you want to install Docker CE? Yes, I do. Do you want to install Docker Compose? Yes, I do. It's going to ask me about several other things that I don't need at this point, but if you don't have a system already running Nginx Proxy Manager, you might want to say yes to this one, but I'm going to say no because I've already got it. And in for that one, in for that one. So I've got a few different things you can install here if you want to, but you don't have to. So it's going to go through and it's going to run the update on the system. That's why I ran this first, because I want my system to be fully up to date. On a virtual private server, sometimes this hits a little weird, hey, I popped up something, and since I'm not presenting that to you with this script, you don't see it, but it looks like it's just hung forever. So if you ever get that on step 1, just Control-C, get out of the script, go run your updates separately, and then come back and rerun the script, and it's going to go through and get everything done. But what I do is I install the stuff that we need, I install your prerequisite packages, and then I'm installing Docker CE right now. And when it's done, I'll tell you what version of Docker CE you got. So I try to always get the latest version whenever you run this. And right there you can see we got 25.0.3. And now it's going to go out and it's going to actually set your user that you're logged in as a user in the Docker group, which helps you run the Docker commands without having to type sudo all the time. It's a better way to run it, in fact. The next thing I do is I go and install Docker Compose. So it goes and grabs the latest version of Docker Compose, and I tell you you've got version 2.24.5 in this case. If you're watching this way later, it may be a higher number by then. And then I create a network, a Docker network for you to use as a base network. And if you have any of those other apps that I set up, it'll put those on that network as well so that you can use them all together inside of the container area. So once we're done with that step, it comes down and just tells you, hey, you got this, you may need to reboot. So we can just do that. We don't even need to reboot. We're just going to exit. And then we'll clear this out. And we're just going to log right back in. And all this does is say, hey, you got added to a new group. So you need to have those permissions. So let's just do Docker PS. It's going to be empty, but if it runs and it doesn't give us an error, then we're set. We're doing good. So we've installed Docker and Docker Compose very easily with a single script pretty much. So yeah, that makes it super easy to get this stuff done. And you're running a really nice late version of Docker. You know, it's ready, it's new, and you've got Docker Community Edition, which is open source and awesome. So of course we want that. All right, we've got all that stuff done. We're almost ready to run WG Easy. We just need to do a couple of setup steps. So let's just go through that really quick. So the first thing I like to do is I always like to have a parent Docker folder that I put my different Docker applications into. So in this case, I'm going to have I'm going to do mkdir-p, and then I'm going to say docker/wg-easy like this. What this does is it says make the directory Docker, but first check and see if it exists. If it exists, use it. And then it goes to the next step. And it says, if this one exists, use it. If not, create it. So it does that for you with one command instead of having to do it twice. And we should have that now. So we're going to cd docker/wg-easy. And if we do an ls, there's nothing in there yet. We want to create a docker compose.yaml file. So we're going to do nano space docker-compose.yml. It's going to be empty. And I've got this nice YAML file that I created here. So I'm just going to copy this guy. And I'm going to go back to my terminal and I'm just going to paste in this text and we'll go through it real quick. I'll have this in the show notes in the description, as I've already said. All right, so we're going to go up here. And this is version 3, WG Easy. The container name is going to be WG Easy. That's fine. The environment variables he wants us to set is language. So that's DE. I do not speak Dutch, I believe is what that is. Could be Deutsch, maybe that's for German. If I'm messing it up, I apologize, but I am EN_US, I believe should work. And then we've got my server IP. So I do have that. It's over there on DigitalOcean. I can just go copy it and paste it in here. And then the password, my admin password. This is going to be your admin password for Wireguard Easy. So since I'm just setting this up for testing, it's okay that you see what I put in. Let's just put in something really bad. Password 1, 2, 3, 4, and then exclamation, exclamation, exclamation. 3 exclamation points. Okay. We'll go back and fill in the IP in just a second. The WG Easy is going to be set to, this is where he's put in the volumes. I actually don't want it in my home folder. So I'm going to do /WG Easy like this, which means put it in the same folder where this docker compose.yaml file is. And that's going to map to the container where it says etc Wireguard, which is great. On the ports, he's got some port mappings going here. These should be open on your system unless you're already running Wireguard on this server somewhere that may be using these same ports. And if you are, you just need to change the left side of these port mappings to something else. You could change this to 68 and 69 if that's what you want. But in this case, I'm not running that, so I'll put him back to what he has by default here. You need a couple of capacity or capabilities that are added, so he adds the netadmin and the system module, which is fine. You don't have to change anything there. He's got some symbols, so net, IPv4, and that's fine. Just leave these things alone. There's nothing to mess with here. And then he's got the image that he's going to use. So we're just going to save this with Control-O, confirm that it's got the right name down here at the bottom, enter. And then we'll exit with Control-X. I'm going to grab the IP address real quick. I want the IPv4 brief A. So here's my IPv4 address that I want to use. I'm just going to copy that. And I'm going to go back into that file. And I'm going to paste that in right here like that. I'm going to save it one more time with Control O and then Control X to exit. And we're pretty well set to start running this thing. So we're just going to type in docker compose up-d 2 ampersands docker compose logs-f. So what this does is it says, first, bring up my containers, pull down the images, get them all started up. And once they're started, run the second command, which is docker compose logs-f, and that says, show me the logs as they're coming in. So it's going to show us everything. We can watch for errors, things like that. We're just going to press enter. It's going to go pull down Wireguard easy for us. It was pretty quick. And yeah, it started everything up. Great. And it shows us some logs. Pretty simple. And there's not a lot of logging, so that's great. It looks like everything's up and running. We should be able to go to that IP address in our browser. So let's just go open up a new tab. We'll paste in. So if we go here and actually put in :51821, I don't think this is going to work with HTTPS, so we need to take that S out of there for now. Yeah, here we go. All right, so I've got it. So let's put in that horrible password we created. And it says there are no new clients. So we've got the user interface up and running, but I would really love to have this web UI running behind something that gives me SSL certificates and makes everything nice and encrypted. So before we start adding clients, let's go do that, and then we'll come back and start adding some clients. All right, I've logged into my reverse proxy, and I use Nginx Proxy Manager. It makes it really easy to set up a reverse proxy. So what we need to do is go over here and say add a new proxy host. And I called this wg.routemehome.org. Now I'm going to hit tab so it creates that little chip. The thing you need to understand is I own the domain routemehome.org. I have already set up an A record that points that to the server where this reverse proxy is running. So when this reverse proxy gets any request for anything at routemehome.org, it checks to see, do I have WG in my list? And if it does, it will pass it on to the IP address that I'm about to type in right here. So when I put in the IP address, I also need to give it the port that it should be running on. So that was 51821. So now we've got our IP address and our port that says if somebody tries to get to wg.routemehome.org, I'm going to send you to this IP address on this port number. So I'm going to say block common exploits, WebSocket support, and it's publicly accessible right now. That's fine. I'm just going to hit save. And here's our entry. So I'm just going to click on it to make sure that one, it comes up and says, hey, do you want to log in? Yes, let's log in. Password 1234. Let's make sure we can sign in. And again, it says, hey, you don't have any devices. We know that, but if you look, I'm still not SSL. So let's go back and just fix that real quick before we continue. So we're going to go to our entry. We're going to go over here to the 3 dots. We're going to click on edit. We're going to go to the SSL tab here. And where it says none, this is a drop down. I'm just going to pick request a new SSL certificate. I'm going to say force SSL, HTTP2 support, HSTS. I'm going to do both of those. I'm going to make sure that my email address is filled in here for the Let's Encrypt, and then I'm going to say I accept the Let's Encrypt terms of service. I'm again going to click save. This is going to spin for a few seconds while Let's Encrypt challenges it to make sure it can reach the actual address. And if it just goes away, if the pop-up just disappears with no error, we're set. It went, that's good. We're going to click on it. Now we can see the little lock, and we know that we're accessing this through SSL, which is great because that's encrypted. Now that we've got that set up, we can go in and start actually adding devices and checking out the UI. So let's get into that. So you've got a couple of places. So first they just give you this nice button because there's nothing here in the grid yet, but after you've got something in the grid, you'll always have this button up here where you can actually add new clients. So now you've got a logout button up here on the right. Again, this is a very simple interface. It's intended to be easy. It's called Wireguard Easy. Let's just say add a new client. Let's give our client a name. Really simple. So this system that I'm on is UB Studio. That's my Ubuntu Studio, and we'll just call this Brian, just in case, so it's easy to identify. We're just going to say create. So it created this, and it says, here's going to be your IP address, 10.8.0.2. That's fine. I can edit that if I don't like it. So I really love that feature because I can't do that with NetBird, and I can't do that with Tailscale that I've found, really. I mean, you can kind of with Tailscale, but then it gives you warnings and stuff if you're using Headscale with it. So I haven't done that so far. So I'm here. I'm just going to click on enter. It's fine, actually, where it's at. If I tab out of it, I guess it's okay. So we've got our first device here, and I want to pull that down to the machine that I'm on. So I'm just going to click on this little download button, and you see right here it says, hey, I'm just going to pull down this configuration file for you. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go over here back to my system. I'll just Control-C out of those logs here, and I'll just clear this out. I'll exit, and now I'm back on my main system, the UB Studio. So let's just clear this out. And if I do CD downloads, and we do an ls, you can see that I've got this ubstudiobrian.conf. What I need to do is get that into my Wireguard, my etsy/Wireguard folder. So first, let's just see if that exists. Let's just do ls/etsy. Well, if I type it correctly. And if we look over here where it should be, I do not see a Wireguard folder yet, so we need to actually get Wireguard installed on our system. That's pretty easy. On Ubuntu Debian-based systems, you just do sudo apt install Wireguard-tools, and that actually installs Wireguard tools on top of the kernel Wireguard. So we're just going to put in our super user password. If you're on Fedora, you just do sudo dnf install Wireguard tools. I believe it's the same thing. So you'll get those things installed either way. There we go. So now if I do cd/etc, or if I do ls/etc, now we have this Wireguard folder. That's awesome. That's what we want. So we can do cp ubstudio.conf, and actually we've got to do sudo because it's in a protected folder area. Sudo cp, or actually just move ubstudio.conf, and we'll move it to /etc/wireguard and enter. So we've got that there. Now I can just do wg or sudo wg quick up, and that's ubstudio Brian, just like that. That should bring up my interface. It did. It came up pretty fast. Looks like everything was able to connect. Let's just do an IP-4-brief A. And here it is right here. So this is my UB Studio Brian, and it shows 10.8.0.2, and I'm on a /24 network, which means I could reach other devices on that network. If we go back to our web interface, you can see that it shows I've actually got some upload download going, and it shows how long I've been connected, which is nice. So it's updating like every second, which is pretty fast. Yeah, so it's got this little indicator that says I'm connected. That's awesome. So I'm going to go set up another device and just kind of let you guys see that. Now I'm actually going to set up a phone. So I'm just going to set up my iPhone, and I'm going to go here and I'm going to say this is iPhone 11. I'm going to say create. And again, you see it gets iPhone 11. It's going to have the .3 address. And I'm going to bring up the QR code. So I'm going to destroy the server after it's over. So if you feel like scanning the QR code, feel free. It's not going to connect to anything, but you can do that for sure. And I'm going to go find my Wireguard app here. Oops. And I'll start recording my screen here before I add this device. So give me just a second. There we go. So I'm in the Wireguard application, and I want to add a new system. And I'm going to tell it from a QR code. It's going to access the camera, and I'm going to get back far enough for it to get the QR code. And it says pick a name for this scanned tunnel. And I'm just going to call this WG-easy and hit save. And there we go. So I've got it done. I'm just going to close the QR code here, and you can see there's the phone. So I'm just going to go ahead and enable that tunnel. And you see, as soon as I did, I mean, it was almost instant. That was really fast. It was like, yep, I see you, you're connected. Here's the information you're getting. That's pretty cool, actually. So I'm just going to disable the phone again from the Wireguard connection. So I've got the iPhone set up. I'm going to go set up one more desktop computer, and we'll do a little bit of testing to make sure we can actually reach each machine back and forth from that. I've added my Dell laptop that I use for a lot of things now, and you can see it's right here, and it is connected. And it's got the IP address of 10.8.0.4, so we can just do a little testing here. And we can actually just clear this out and CD real quick. And we can do ping 10.8.0.4. And there we go. It's already getting pings back and forth, so we're able to connect. That's awesome. Can I SSH to it that way? Let's find out. I don't even know if I have SSH enabled on that machine. 10.8.0.4. It does, and it wants to know the password, I'm sure. And there we go. I'm doing that through the Wireguard network, which is leaving my house and coming back in to make that initial connection. And then it's a peer-to-peer connection between these machines. So pretty awesome and pretty easy to do. So I can just exit that. We can clear that out. Yeah, I mean, that's it. It's Wireguard easy. It's made easy on purpose and just really a great job. I think this is a really cool, really nice interface. Easy enough to disable different devices if you want to. I mean, just very clean, very simple. The kind of thing you really look for whenever you're actually trying to say, I just need Wireguard set up so I can make my devices communicate. Now, I want to say that the caveat between something like this and something like Headscale, Tailscale, NetMaker, NetBird is that this is meant to connect each device. This is not meant to have a whole bunch of different groups of devices set up. This is not configured in that kind of way. It's not meant to have different users with access to different devices but not other devices. It's really meant to set up all of your devices on a network where they can communicate from anywhere in the world technically, and it's super clean, and I really like this. Hope you enjoyed this. If you did, like, subscribe, tell your friends about it so they can come along in the open source journey with us, and I'll talk to you next time. It's your open source advocate, and I'm back, and I've set up a store with a little bit of merchandise. I love being your open source advocate, but I want you guys to be the open source advocates with me. So if you want to, get out there and get some of this stuff. And if you do, let me know what you think of it. Thank you for subscribing.